The dusty wind carried the scent of sage and desperation, as Dakota Callahan watched the woman collapse against his porch railing, her threadbare dress doing little to protect her from the harsh Arizona sun beating down on his ranch just outside Camp Verde. It was June of 1882, and Dakota had grown accustomed to being alone. At 27, he had spent the last 5 years building his cattle operation from nothing, nursing wounds both physical and emotional from a past he preferred not to think about. The ranch house, a modest structure of timber and stone, stood isolated against the red rock landscape, miles from the nearest neighbor. He had chosen this location precisely because it meant fewer people, fewer questions, and fewer opportunities for disappointment. But now this woman, clearly at the end of her rope, was leaning against his railing like she might blow away if the wind picked up any stronger. Dakota dismounted from his horse, his boots hitting the packed earth with a soft thud. He approached cautiously, removing his hat as he got closer. "Madam, you all right?" She lifted her head, and he found himself looking into the most striking pair of amber eyes he had ever seen. Despite the dust coating her face and the exhaustion evident in every line of her body, there was a strength in those eyes that gave him pause. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with dark auburn hair pulled back in a braid that had mostly come undone during whatever journey had brought her to his doorstep. "I apologize for the intrusion, sir," she said, her voice hoarse and cracking. "I was told in town that you might be looking for help around your ranch. I can cook, clean, mend, tend gardens. I am a hard worker, I promise you that." Dakota studied her for a long moment. It was true that he had mentioned to the general store owner a few weeks back that managing the house alongside the ranch work was becoming difficult. But he had expected someone older, maybe a widow looking for work, not this young woman who looked like she had not eaten properly in days. "What's your name?" he asked. "Tessa Sullivan, sir, but most people call me Tessa." "And where are you from, Miss Sullivan?" Her gaze dropped to the porch boards. "Most recently from Prescott, before that St. Louis. Before that it hardly matters anymore." There was a story there, Dakota could tell. Everyone out west had a story, usually one they were running from. He had his own, so he was not inclined to judge. You got references. Family, no family, not anymore. As for references, I worked for the Henderson family in Prescott for 3 years. Mrs. Henderson died last month, and Mr. Henderson decided to sell the house and move back east. He gave me a letter. She reached into a small canvas bag slung across her shoulder and produced a crumpled envelope. Dakota took it, noting how her hands trembled slightly. He unfolded the letter and read the neat script praising Tessa's work ethic, her cooking skills, and her honest character. It was signed by Thomas Henderson with an address in Prescott. "Why did you not go with them east?" Dakota asked. He offered, "But I have no desire to return to that part of the country. I have my reasons." Dakota folded the letter and handed it back. He should send her away. Having a young woman living in his house, even as hired help, would cause talk in town. But something in her eyes, that mixture of pride and desperation, reminded him of himself 5 years ago. Besides, he genuinely did need the help, and she clearly needed a place to stay. "I can offer you room and board plus $30 a month," he said. "There is a small room off the kitchen that you can have. I expect 3 meals a day, laundry done weekly, and general housekeeping. I am out with the cattle most days from dawn until supper time. I do not tolerate drinking or stealing, and I expect honesty. If something needs fixing or buying, you tell me. If this arrangement does not work out for either of us, 2 weeks' notice." That seemed fair. The relief that washed over her face was so profound that Dakota felt something twist in his chest. When had he last seen someone so grateful for such a simple thing as work and shelter? More than fair, Mr. Callahan. Thank you. I will not disappoint you, I swear it. Let me show you the house then. He led her inside, acutely aware of how shabby the place must look to her. He had built it for function, not comfort. The main room served as both sitting area and dining space, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. The kitchen was through a doorway to the left, equipped with a cast iron stove, a wash basin, and open shelves holding his meager collection of dishes and pots. His bedroom was upstairs, a simple space with a bed, a chest of drawers, and little else. The room he showed her off the kitchen was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window that looked out over the vegetable garden he had been neglecting. It was not much, but it was private and had a door that latched from the inside. "It is perfect," Tessa said softly, setting her bag down on the bed. "Truly." "When did you last eat?" Dakota asked. She hesitated. "Yesterday morning," he nodded. "I will fix something. Nothing fancy, but it will fill your belly. You settle in, wash up if you like. Water barrel is just outside the kitchen door." Dakota left her to it and went to the kitchen. He was not much of a cook, but he could manage bacon and beans and cornbread, which he set about preparing. As he worked, he could hear the sounds of her moving around in the small room, the splash of water in a basin. He tried not to think about what circumstances might have left a young woman alone and hungry, wandering the Arizona territory with nothing but a canvas bag and a letter of reference. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she had washed her face and hands and attempted to tidy her hair. She still looked exhausted but more composed. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to the table. "It is not much, but it is hot. It smells wonderful." They ate in silence at first, Dakota watching as she forced herself to eat slowly despite obviously being famished. Good manners despite her circumstances. That told him something about her character. "So what made you come all the way out here?" he finally asked. "Camp Verde is not exactly on the way to anywhere." Tessa took a sip of water before answering. "I heard there were opportunities out here, ranches needing help, fewer questions asked. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere I could work and save money and maybe have a future. Running from something." Her amber eyes met his steadily. "No more than you are, I would wager." Dakota felt a grudging respect for her directness. "Fair enough, we all got our past. Mine is I do not want to discuss it. That suit you perfectly. Then we will get along just fine." Over the next few days, Dakota discovered that Tessa had not exaggerated her capabilities. The house, which he had allowed to fall into a state of functional disorder, began to transform. She cleaned with an efficiency that spoke of long practice, organized the kitchen so that everything had its proper place, and cooked meals that made him realize just how poorly he had been eating. Her biscuits alone were worth the $30 a month. More than that, she seemed to understand instinctively how to share space with someone who valued solitude. She did not pepper him with questions or attempt to fill every silence with chatter. She simply did her work, did it well, and stayed out of his way when he needed to be alone. For his part, Dakota tried to be a considerate employer. He made sure she had money for supplies when he went to town, asked if there was anything she needed, and respected her privacy as she respected his. It was a comfortable arrangement, practical and uncomplicated, or so he told himself. The truth was that having Tessa in the house changed things in ways he had not anticipated. He found himself coming in earlier from working the cattle, telling himself it was because he wanted a proper meal, not because he enjoyed the way the house smelled of fresh bread and coffee. He started washing up more carefully before supper, claiming it was simple hygiene, not because he cared about sitting across from her at the table with dirt under his fingernails. And he definitely was not lingering over those meals, drawing out conversations about inconsequential things, just to hear her voice. 2 weeks into their arrangement, a thunderstorm rolled in one evening, the kind of dramatic display that Arizona summers were known for. Lightning split the sky and thunder rattled the windows while rain hammered the roof. Dakota sat in the main room, pretending to read a 6-month-old newspaper while Tessa mended one of his shirts by lamplight. "Do storms bother you?" he asked when a particularly loud crack of thunder made the house shudder. She looked up from her mending and smiled. "No, I have always liked them, actually. They make everything feel washed clean afterward, even out here where it barely rains enough to matter, especially out here. The desert smells wonderful after rain." They lapsed back into silence, but it was a companionable one. Dakota studied her profile when she bent back over her work, noting the delicate line of her jaw, the way lamplight caught in her hair. She had filled out a bit in the past 2 weeks, no longer looking quite so gaunt. Good food and steady work had brought color back to her cheeks. "Can I ask you something?" Tessa said suddenly. "You can ask. Cannot promise I will answer. Why do you live all the way out here? I mean, I understand wanting space, but you are so far from everything. Do you not get lonely?" Dakota set down the newspaper. "I got used to being alone. Easier that way." "Easier than what?" "Than counting on people and being disappointed." Tessa was quiet for a moment, her needle pausing in its work. "Someone hurt you badly, did they not? I thought we agreed no questions about the past." "You are right. I apologize." She went back to her mending, but then added softly, "For what it is worth, I understand. About disappointment." Dakota wanted to ask what she meant, what disappointment had driven her west with nothing but a bag and a letter. But he had just reinforced the boundary about questions, so he let it drop. Still, he wondered. As June gave way to July, a rhythm established itself. Dakota rose before dawn and headed out to check on the cattle, fix fences, move livestock to different grazing areas, and handle the 100 other tasks that came with running a ranch. Tessa tended the house, coaxed the garden back to life, and always had food ready when he came in. Evenings they spent in the main room, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence while she worked on some project and he caught up on ranch accounts or saddle repair. It was during one of these evenings that Tessa spoke about her past, albeit briefly. "I should tell you something," she said, setting aside the shirt she was hemming, "in case it matters, in case someone ever comes asking." Dakota looked up from the leather strap he was oiling. "All right. I was married, briefly, in St. Louis when I was 19. His name was Peter and he seemed like a good man. But he drank, and when he drank, he got mean." She said it plainly, without drama, but Dakota felt his jaw tighten. "One night he got meaner than usual and I fought back. He fell, hit his head on the fireplace. The doctor said he would be fine, that I should go home and let him sleep it off. But he died 3 days later. Brain injury, they said." "You defended yourself," Dakota said firmly. "That is not murder." His family did not see it that way. They had money and connections. "They made it clear I was not welcome in St. Louis anymore. So I went to Prescott, changed my name from Sullivan Price back to just Sullivan, and tried to start over. When Mrs. Henderson died and I had to leave, I decided to come further west. Somewhere nobody knows me or cares about what happened in Missouri." "Your secret is safe with me," Dakota said. "And for what it is worth, I am glad you fought back, glad you got away from him." Tessa's smile was small but genuine. "Thank you, that means more than you know." "We all did what we had to do to survive," Dakota heard himself saying. "I was a soldier once, cavalry. Did things in the name of duty that I am not proud of now. Saw things that made me question everything I thought I knew about honor and country. When my enlistment was up, I took my pay and came out here to forget, to build something that did not involve taking orders or hurting people. Do you forget? No. But out here, the memories are quieter. They shared a look then, a moment of understanding between two people carrying their own scars. And in that moment, Dakota felt something shift inside him, a wall he had not even realized he had built beginning to develop cracks. August brought scorching heat and the hard work of preparing for the cattle drive to Flagstaff. Dakota would need to move his herd to market in September, which meant spending long days making sure the cattle were healthy and ready for the journey. It also meant hiring extra hands for the drive, which he had been putting off. "You are going to need help," Tessa said one morning over breakfast. "You cannot drive cattle all that way by yourself." "I know. I will go into town next week, see about hiring a few men." "And what about here?" "The house." Dakota had been thinking about this. "You will be here, same as always. Alone. For how long? 3 weeks, maybe a month. I know it is not ideal, but I will make sure you have everything you need before I go. Plenty of supplies, money for emergencies." Tessa bit her lip, a gesture he had come to recognize as her thinking hard about something. "Could I come with you? On a cattle drive? I can ride. I can cook for the men, help with camp. It would be useful to have someone handling food and such, would it not?" She was not wrong. Trail drives were hard enough without everyone taking turns trying to cook over a campfire. But the thought of Tessa spending weeks on the trail with a group of hired cowboys made him uneasy for reasons he did not want to examine too closely. "It is rough work," he said. "Long days, sleeping on the ground, dust and heat and ornery cattle. I have done rough work before, and honestly the thought of staying here alone for a month does not appeal to me. At least on the trail there would be people around. People." She meant him, Dakota realized. She did not want him to leave any more than he wanted to leave her behind. The realization sent a warm sensation through his chest that he tried very hard to ignore. "All right," he heard himself say. "You can come, but it is going to be hard, and if you change your mind, I want you to say so." Her face lit up in a way that made his heart do something complicated. "I will not change my mind. Thank you, Dakota." It was the first time she had used his given name, and he liked the sound of it in her voice far too much. The next few weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Dakota hired 3 cowboys who came recommended by the general store owner, men who had worked drives before and knew their business. Tessa threw herself into planning meals and supplies, calculating what they would need and how to pack it efficiently. Dakota found himself watching her more often than he should, admiring her competence and the determined set to her jaw when she was focused on a task. One afternoon, he found her in the barn learning to handle his spare horse, a gentle mare named Juniper. "You doing all right?" he asked, leaning against the stall door. "She is sweet," Tessa said, stroking the mare's nose. "I used to ride when I was younger before everything happened. It feels good to be around horses again. Juniper will treat you right. She is steady, even when cattle get wild." Tessa turned to face him, still holding the mare's halter. "Can I ask you something? Seems to be a habit of yours." She smiled at that. "Why did you really say yes to letting me come?" Dakota considered lying, making up something about practicality and camp cooking. But they had been honest with each other so far, and he found he did not want to stop now. "Because I did not want to leave you behind," he admitted. "Because somehow in the past 2 months, I have gotten used to having you around. And because the thought of being away from you for a month did not sit right." Tessa's amber eyes widened slightly, and he saw color rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the heat of the barn. "Oh, if that is too forward, I apologize. I am not trying to make you uncomfortable. You work for me, and I respect that, but I wanted to be honest. I am glad you were." She took a step closer to him. Because I have gotten used to having you around too. These past months have been the first time in years that I have felt safe. That I have felt like I had a home, not just a place to stay. You did that, Dakota. You gave me that. They stood there in the dusty barn with afternoon lights slanting through the boards, close enough that he could count the faint freckles across her nose. He wanted to kiss her, wanted it so badly that his hands actually trembled with the effort of holding back. But he did not. Not yet. She had been hurt before, and he would not rush this, would not risk scaring her away. Instead, he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You are not just hired help, Tessa. You have not been for a while now. I hope you know that. I was hoping, she whispered, but it is good to hear you say it. The cattle drive began on a clear September morning. Dakota, Tessa, and the 3 hired hands, Jake, Samuel, and Thomas, set out with 60 head of cattle bound for the market in Flagstaff. The first few days were relatively easy, getting into the rhythm of moving livestock, setting up camp, and managing the herd. True to her word, Tessa proved invaluable. She cooked hearty meals over the campfire that kept the men fueled for the hard work of driving cattle. She stayed calm when things got chaotic, and she could ride well enough to help with the herd when extra hands were needed. The cowboys treated her with respect, partly because of her competence and partly because Dakota made it clear she was under his protection. At night, after the others had rolled into their bedrolls, Dakota and Tessa would sit by the fire, talking quietly about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood in Colorado, about his parents who had died when he was young, about the years spent drifting before he joined the cavalry. She told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her mother who had been a seamstress and her father who had worked at the docks, both gone now from fever. You think people can truly start over? Tessa asked one night, watching the flames dance. Or do we just carry everything with us no matter where we go? I think we carry it, Dakota said. But maybe out here the load gets lighter. Maybe finding the right place, the right people, makes it easier to bear. Have you found that, the right place? I found the place first. The ranch, the solitude, I thought that was enough. He turned to look at her, her face golden in the firelight. But then you showed up half dead on my porch, and I realized solitude was not the same as peace. And now I think maybe peace is not something you find alone. Maybe it is something you build with someone else. Tessa reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. They sat like that until the fire burned low, not needing to say anything more. The drive was not without its challenges. A few cattle got spooked by a rattlesnake and had to be rounded up. A sudden rainstorm turned the trail to mud and slowed their progress by a full day. One of the cowboys, Thomas, got thrown from his horse and bruised his ribs, though he insisted on continuing. But through it all, Dakota found himself happier than he had been in years. The work was hard but satisfying, and having Tessa nearby, seeing her smile when he rode into camp each evening, made everything feel worthwhile. He caught himself planning beyond the drive, thinking about improvements to the ranch, about building a proper garden wall, about adding rooms to the house, about a future that included her in it. They were 2 days out from Flagstaff when things came to a head. They had made camp near a creek, and Tessa had gone down to wash some dishes after supper. When she did not return after 20 minutes, Dakota went looking for her. He found her sitting on a flat rock by the water, staring at the stream. Even in the gathering darkness, he could see the tension in her shoulders. Tessa. Something wrong, she looked up at him, and he was startled to see tears on her cheeks. I am scared. Of what? He sat down beside her, resisting the urge to pull her into his arms. Of this ending. Of getting to Flagstaff and then going back to the ranch and having everything go back to how it was. Of losing this. She gestured between them. I know I am just your housekeeper. I know I should not want more, but I do, Dakota. I want so much more, and it terrifies me. Why does it terrify you? Because the last time I let myself care about someone, it ended badly. Because I am afraid that what I am feeling is just gratitude or loneliness, not real. Because what if you do not feel the same way? Dakota did take her hand then, holding it gently in both of his. I feel the same way. I have been feeling it for months now, since probably the first week you were at the ranch. Every day I wake up and my first thought is about seeing you at breakfast. Every evening I ride back thinking about sitting across from you at supper. You have turned my house into a home, Tessa, but more than that, you have turned my life into something worth living again. Truly, truly, I love you. I did not plan to, and God knows I fought against it. But somewhere between your first meal and your 100th smile and all those evenings by the fire, I fell completely in love with you. Tessa let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I love you too. I think I have for a while now. I just did not let myself believe it could be real. It is real. Dakota reached up and cupped her face gently, giving her every chance to pull away. When she leaned into his touch instead, he felt something in his chest expand. Can I kiss you, please? He kissed her softly at first, just a gentle press of lips, giving her control. But when she sighed and wound her arms around his neck, he deepened it, pouring months of longing and hope into the kiss. She tasted like coffee and creek water in coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Tessa was smiling through her tears. So this is not going back to how it was. Not even close. When we get back to the ranch, I want to court you properly. I want to take you to town, introduce you as the woman I am going to marry if she will have me. I want to build you the life you deserve. I already have the life I deserve, Tessa said, kissing him again. I have you. They stayed by the creek for a long time, talking about the future, about dreams and plans and all the possibilities that had opened up between them. By the time they walked back to camp, hand in hand, Dakota felt lighter than he had in years. The next morning, the other cowboys noticed the change immediately. Jake, the oldest of the three, gave Dakota a knowing grin. About time, boss. We have been taking bets on when you two would figure it out. Dakota felt his ears heat up, but he could not bring himself to be embarrassed. Not when Tessa was laughing and the morning sun was bright, and his future suddenly looked so much bigger than he had ever imagined. They reached Flagstaff without further incident. The cattle market was bustling, and Dakota got a good price for his herd, better than he had hoped. After settling accounts and paying the cowboys their wages, he found himself with more money than he had seen in years. Let us celebrate, he told Tessa, leading her down the main street. Get you a proper meal, not cooked over a campfire. Maybe look at the shops. Dakota, you do not have to spend money on me. I want to. Let me do this. They ended up at a small restaurant that served steak and potatoes and pie that Tessa declared was almost as good as hers. Afterward, they walked through town, looking in shop windows. Dakota insisted on buying her a new dress, a beautiful blue cotton that matched her eyes when the light hit them right. He also bought supplies for the ranch, a new set of tools, and after some internal debate, a ring. It was simple, a silver band with a small turquoise stone, but when he saw it in the jeweler's window, he knew it was meant for Tessa. He bought it while she was distracted in the general store and tucked it safely into his pocket. They spent that night in a hotel, in separate rooms despite the desire burning between them. Dakota wanted to do this right, wanted to marry her properly before taking that step. It was old-fashioned maybe, but after everything they had both been through, he wanted to give them the chance to build something solid. The journey back to the ranch took another week. The landscape felt different now, brighter somehow. Or maybe it was just that Dakota was seeing it through the lens of his new happiness. He and Tessa rode side by side most days, talking and laughing and planning. "I was thinking we could expand the garden," Tessa said one afternoon. "Plant more vegetables, maybe some fruit trees. And we need chickens. A house is not complete without chickens." "Chickens it is. What else?" "More books. I noticed your collection is sparse, and maybe we could build a proper porch on the house, somewhere to sit in the evenings." "I like that idea. A porch where we can watch the sunset. Where our children can play someday," Tessa added softly. Dakota nearly fell off his horse. "Children," she blushed. "I know we are getting ahead of ourselves, but I think about it, about a family, about building something lasting." "I think about it too," Dakota admitted. "More than I probably should, given we are not even married yet." "Yet?" He pulled his horse to a stop and dismounted, then helped her down from Juniper. They were in the middle of nowhere, red rocks rising around them and the sky impossibly blue overhead. It was not how he had planned this, but suddenly it felt exactly right. "Tessa Sullivan," he said, taking both her hands in his. "I know we have not known each other long. 6 months is not much time in the grand scheme of things, but I know what I feel and I know what I want. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build a home with you, raise children with you, grow old with you. Will you marry me?" He pulled the ring from his pocket and held it up. Tessa's eyes went wide, filling with tears. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he was kissing her, right there in the middle of the Arizona desert, and she was kissing him back, and nothing had ever felt so right. They made it back to the ranch a week later, engaged and planning a wedding. Dakota wanted to do it soon, did not see the point in waiting. Tessa agreed, so they set a date for early October, just a month away. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. They went to town to meet with the pastor at the small church, a kind man named Reverend Matthews, who was delighted to perform the ceremony. Tessa ordered fabric to make a wedding dress, though she insisted it did not need to be anything fancy. Dakota arranged for a few supplies for a small celebration after the ceremony. "Are you sure you do not want a big wedding?" he asked one evening as they sat on the newly built porch, watching the sunset just as they had imagined. "I could afford it now, after the cattle sale." "I do not need big," Tessa said, leaning against his shoulder. "I just need you, and maybe a few friends from town to witness it. That is enough for me." "You are sure?" "Dakota, I spent years in situations where I had no control, no say in my own life. It is my choice. And I choose simple and honest and real. I choose you." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I choose you too, every day for the rest of my life." The wedding took place on a bright October morning. Tessa wore the dress she had made, a simple white cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. She looked beautiful, radiant in a way that had nothing to do with the dress and everything to do with the joy shining from her face. Dakota wore his best suit, the one he had bought for the occasion, and tried not to let his hands shake as he stood at the altar. A small group had gathered to witness the ceremony, people from town who had gotten to know them over the past months, the general store owner and his wife, a few neighboring ranchers, and the 3 cowboys who had worked the cattle drive. When Tessa walked down the aisle, her hand tucked into the arm of Reverend Matthews since she had no father to give her away, Dakota felt his throat tighten with emotion. This woman, who had stumbled into his life half dead and desperate, was about to become his wife. It felt like a miracle. The ceremony was short and sweet. They exchanged vows, traditional words that somehow felt new and profound in the moment. Dakota promised to love and cherish her, to protect and provide for her, for as long as they both lived. Tessa promised the same, her voice clear and strong despite the tears streaming down her face. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Dakota kissed her with all the love and promise he felt, not caring that half the town was watching. Tessa kissed him back, her arms tight around his neck, and the small group erupted in applause and cheers. They held a simple reception at the ranch, with food and dancing and genuine celebration. As the sun set and their guests began to depart, Dakota and Tessa stood on their porch, watching the stars come out. "Are you happy?" he asked, holding her close. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said. "You gave me everything, Dakota. A home, a future, a reason to believe in good things again." "You gave me more," he said. "You gave me reasons to come home. Every single day you made me want to be better, do better, build something worthwhile. You saved me, Tessa, just as much as I like to think I saved you." "We saved each other," she said. "That is what love does." That night, in the privacy of their bedroom, they came together as husband and wife. Dakota was gentle and patient, mindful of her past trauma, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Tessa responded with a passion that matched his own, and afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, they talked about their future. "I want at least 3 children," Tessa said, tracing patterns on his chest. "Maybe 4, a house full of noise and laughter and life." "I want whatever makes you happy," Dakota said. "Though I have to admit, the idea of a son or daughter with your eyes sounds pretty perfect, or your stubbornness. That too." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when Dakota woke in the early morning hours, he lay still for a long moment just watching her sleep. His wife, his Tessa, the woman who had transformed his lonely existence into something rich and full of promise. The first year of their marriage flew by in a blur of hard work and happiness. They expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and hiring occasional help for the bigger jobs. The garden flourished under Tessa's care, providing fresh vegetables all summer. They got the chickens she had wanted, and Dakota built a proper coop for them. In the evenings, they sat on their porch and talked about their days, making plans and dreaming dreams. Dakota taught Tessa more about ranching, and she proved to have a good head for the business side of things. She started keeping the books for the ranch, organizing their finances in a way that let them see clearly where they were and where they were going. They went to town regularly, attending church services and community events. People had been suspicious at first, the lonely cowboy and his mail-order housekeeper turned wife, but Tessa's genuine kindness and Dakota's honest work ethic won them over. They made friends, real friends, and built a place for themselves in the community. In the spring of 1884, Tessa told him she was pregnant. Dakota remembered the moment with perfect clarity. He had come in for lunch, dusty and tired from mending fence all morning. Tessa had made his favorite stew, and they were sitting at the table when she set down her spoon and looked at him with those amber eyes. "I have something to tell you," she said, reaching for his hand. "I am going to have a baby, our baby." For a moment, Dakota could not speak. Joy and terror and overwhelming love crashed through him all at once. "A baby. They were going to be parents, are you sure?" he finally managed. "I am sure. I saw the doctor in town last week when you were working on the north pasture. He confirmed it. The baby should come in October." October. The same month they had gotten married. Dakota stood up and pulled Tessa into his arms, holding her as carefully as if she were made of glass. "I love you," he said. "I love you so much, and I am going to love this baby just as much." "I know," Tessa said, her arms around his waist. "I am scared, but I am excited too. We are going to be good at this, Dakota. I can feel it." She was right. Over the months that followed, as her belly grew and the baby moved inside her, they prepared. Dakota built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving simple designs into the headboard. Tessa sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands steady despite her nerves. They turned the small room off the kitchen, the one that had been hers when she first arrived, into a nursery. The pregnancy was not easy. Tessa was sick in the mornings for months, and as summer turned to fall, she grew tired easily. But she never complained, just smiled and rubbed her swollen belly and talked to the baby about the life they were preparing. Their son was born on a cool October evening after 12 hours of labor that left Dakota feeling helpless and terrified. The doctor from town was there, along with the doctor's wife who served as midwife. And finally, the baby's cry filled the house. "You have a son," the doctor said, placing the squirming, red-faced infant in Tessa's arms. Dakota looked at his wife and his son, and something inside him shifted permanently. This was his family. This was everything. "He is perfect," Tessa breathed, tears streaming down her exhausted face. "Look at him, Dakota. Look at what we made." "He has your nose," Dakota said, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. The little fingers immediately wrapped around his, gripping with surprising strength. They named him Daniel after Dakota's father. Daniel Callahan came into the world healthy and loud, and he changed everything. The first few months were exhausting, full of sleepless nights and steep learning curves. But they were also full of wonder. Every smile, every new sound, every milestone felt like a miracle. Dakota found himself rushing through his ranch work, eager to get back to the house where Tessa and Daniel waited. He loved coming home to find her rocking the baby, singing softly, her face soft with maternal love. He loved the way Daniel's eyes would track him across the room, the way the baby seemed to know his father's voice. "You are a natural," Tessa told him one night, watching as he walked Daniel around the room, trying to soothe him to sleep. "I was worried you might feel left out with how much attention babies need, but you dove right in." "How could I feel left out? This is my son, our son. I want to be here for everything. I do not want to miss a single moment." As Daniel grew from infant to toddler, the ranch thrived. Dakota's reputation for quality cattle spread, and he was able to sell his herds for good prices. They expanded the house, adding 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The garden grew, and Tessa started selling her excess vegetables in town, earning money she set aside for Daniel's future. Their life was not perfect. There were hard seasons when rain did not come and the cattle suffered. There were illnesses and accidents, like when Dakota broke his arm in a fall and could not work for weeks. There were moments of doubt and fear about whether they were doing right by their son, raising him so isolated from other children. But through it all, they had each other. And that made every challenge bearable. When Daniel was 3, Tessa became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter was born in the spring of 1888. They named her Rose, and she had Tessa's auburn hair and Dakota's blue eyes. If Daniel had changed their lives, Rose completed them. The house filled with the sounds of children playing, of laughter and occasional tears and endless questions. Dakota built swings in the yard and taught Daniel to ride when the boy turned 5. Tessa homeschooled both children, determined they would have good educations despite living so far from town. In the evenings, they all sat on the porch together, watching the sunset and telling stories. "Tell us again how you met Mama," Daniel would say, and Dakota would launch into the tale of the dusty day when a desperate woman collapsed on his porch. "I thought she was going to blow away," he always said, making the story dramatic. "But it turned out she was the strongest person I had ever met." "Tell us about the cattle drive," Rose would beg, and Tessa would describe the adventure, making it sound exciting and fun rather than the hard work it had been. Their children grew up knowing they were loved, surrounded by the kind of security and affection that both Dakota and Tessa had lacked in their own childhoods. They were determined to break those cycles, to give their children the stable, loving home they themselves had had to fight to create. In 1892, when Daniel was 8 and Rose was 4, they had another addition to the family. Another son, this one named Samuel after Tessa's father. The house felt full to bursting with 3 children, but it was a good fullness, the kind that made every corner feel alive. Dakota was 41 now, with silver threading through his hair and lines around his eyes from years of squinting in the sun. But he felt younger than he had at 27, when he had lived alone and empty. Tessa, at 36, was more beautiful than ever, her face showing the marks of laughter and love. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked him one evening after the children were finally in bed. They sat on their porch, the one they had dreamed about years ago, holding hands as the stars came out. "When I first showed up here, did you imagine we would have all this?" "Not even close," Dakota admitted. "I imagined being alone for the rest of my life. I thought that was what I wanted, what I deserved. I had no idea that loneliness was not peace, that isolation was not the same as safety. And now I cannot imagine my life without you, without them. You gave me everything, Tessa. You gave me reasons to come home, reasons to keep going, reasons to believe the world could be good." "You did the same for me," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I was so lost when I found you. I had nowhere to go, no hope for the future. And you took me in, gave me work and dignity and eventually love. You saved my life, Dakota." "We saved each other," he said, echoing her words from their wedding night. "That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of the desert. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Inside, one of the children stirred and then settled back to sleep. The ranch, their home, was quiet and peaceful. "You ever regret it?" Tessa asked suddenly. "Giving up your solitude, taking on a wife and children and all the responsibility that comes with it." Dakota pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Not for 1 second. You and those children in there, you are my life. Everything I do for you. Every morning when I wake up and every night when I go to sleep, I thank whatever force in the universe brought you to my door that day. Even though I was a mess, hungry and desperate and running from my past, especially because of that. Because it meant you needed what I had to offer and I needed what you brought. We fit together, Tessa. We always have." She turned in his arms and kissed him, a soft kiss full of years of love and understanding. "I love you, Dakota Callahan. I will love you until the day I die. And I love you, Tessa Callahan, forever and always." As the years continued to pass, the ranch became known throughout the territory as one of the most successful operations around Camp Verde. Dakota had earned a reputation for fair dealing and quality livestock, and his family had earned one for kindness and integrity. They were respected members of the community, active in church and local affairs. Daniel grew into a thoughtful young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He learned everything Dakota could teach him about cattle and land management, and showed a natural aptitude for the work. Rose was bright and inquisitive, constantly reading and asking questions. She talked about becoming a teacher someday, wanting to bring education to children in remote areas. Samuel, the baby, was still finding his way, but he showed signs of being the most adventurous of the 3. In 1897, when Daniel was 16, he asked if he could start taking on more responsibility around the ranch. Dakota, seeing his son's readiness, agreed. They became true partners in running the operation. and Dakota felt a deep satisfaction in knowing the ranch would continue after he was gone, that he was building something lasting. That same year, Tessa celebrated her 45th birthday. Dakota threw her a party, inviting friends from town and the surrounding ranches. As he watched her laugh and talk with their guests, surrounded by their children and the life they had built, he felt overwhelming gratitude. "Speech," someone called out, and the room quieted. Dakota stood, suddenly self-conscious but determined to say what was in his heart. 23 years ago, a woman showed up at my ranch with nothing but a bag and a letter of reference. I hired her to keep my house, thinking it was a simple business arrangement. But it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. Tessa, you turned my house into a home, my existence into a life, my loneliness into love. You gave me 3 amazing children and more happiness than any man deserves. Happy birthday to my wife, my partner, and the love of my life." The room erupted in applause, and Tessa came to him with tears in her eyes. "That was beautiful," she said, embracing him. "Just the truth," he said. "Always the truth with you." As the party continued around them, they slipped out onto the porch, their refuge and favorite place. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the desert air was cool and clean. "You remember what you said to me that first night when we admitted we loved each other?" Tessa asked. "I said a lot of things that night. You said peace is not something you find alone, that it is something you build with someone else. Do you still believe that?" Dakota looked at her, this woman who had walked into his life and transformed everything. "More than ever. We built this, Tessa. This peace, this life, this family. We built it together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And I would not change a single moment. Not even the hard parts, especially not the hard parts. They taught us who we are, what we are capable of. They made the good parts even better." Tessa smiled, that same smile that had captivated him all those years ago. "Then we did it right. We did it perfect." They stood together on their porch, looking out over the land they had worked and loved, the house that held their sleeping children, the life they had built from nothing but hope and hard work. The cowboy who had once been so lonely, he thought he preferred it that way. And the woman who had nowhere to go and nothing to her name, had found in each other everything they needed. Years continued to roll by with the rhythm of seasons. Summers of hard work under the blazing Arizona sun, autumns of cattle drives and harvest, winters of planning and repair, springs of renewal and birth. The ranch prospered, growing from a modest operation to one of the most respected in the territory. In 1902, Daniel married a girl from town, Mary Henderson, daughter of the blacksmith. They had a simple ceremony at the ranch, with family and friends gathered to celebrate. Dakota watched his son pledge his love and could not help but remember his own wedding day, the joy and promise of it. He saw the same emotions reflected in Daniel's face and felt pride swell in his chest. Mary moved into the ranch, and soon the house echoed with another generation. In 1903, Dakota and Tessa became grandparents when Mary gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Emma. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Dakota felt the circle of life completing itself in the most beautiful way. "She has your eyes," Tessa said, watching him cradle Emma. "And your nose," he replied. "Perfect." Rose, true to her dreams, went to teachers' college in Prescott when she turned 18. It was hard to see her go, but Dakota and Tessa were proud of her determination to follow her calling. She wrote letters regularly, full of her studies and her plans to return to Arizona and teach. Samuel, now 15, showed an interest in the medical profession after helping the doctor in town during an outbreak of influenza. Dakota supported this dream too, though it meant Samuel would eventually have to leave for proper training. He had learned that loving his children meant supporting their paths, even when those paths led away from the ranch. But for now, they were all still connected, still part of the family they had built together. In 1905, Tessa turned 53 and Dakota was 54. They were grandparents now, with Emma joined by a grandson named James. Their hair was gray, their hands marked by years of work, but their love was as strong as ever. "Can you believe it has been 23 years?" Tessa asked one evening. They were sitting on their porch, as always, watching another sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Dakota said. "I can still see you standing on that porch railing, looking like you might collapse at any moment." "I probably would have if you had not taken me in. I do not like to think about what might have happened if I had kept walking that day." "Do not think about it. You are here, we are here, and everything turned out exactly as it was supposed to. Do you think we will have more years?" Tessa asked softly. "I am not ready to be done yet. There is still so much I want to see." "We will have as many years as we are given," Dakota said, taking her hand, "and we will fill every one of them with love and purpose just like we always have. Promise, promise." They kept that promise. As the years continued, they remained active and engaged. Dakota gradually turned over more of the ranch operations to Daniel, but he still rode out most days, checking on things and enjoying the work that had defined so much of his life. Tessa continued to tend her garden, now with Emma's help, teaching her granddaughter about plants and patience. Rose returned from college and took a teaching position in Camp Verde, allowing her to stay close to family while pursuing her passion. She brought new energy to the small schoolhouse, and children from surrounding ranches thrived under her instruction. Samuel left for medical school in San Francisco in 1906, a departure that was both proud and painful. But he promised to return, to bring his skills back to the territory that needed doctors badly. In 1910, Dakota was 59 and starting to feel his age. His joints ached in the mornings and the hard physical work of ranching was getting more difficult, but he refused to slow down too much. The ranch was his life's work, and he wanted to remain involved as long as he was able. One evening that fall, after a particularly long day, he came in to find Tessa had made his favorite meal: roast beef with potatoes and carrots from the garden and apple pie for dessert. "What is the occasion?" he asked, washing up. "Do I need an occasion to make your favorite dinner?" "No, but you usually have one." She smiled mysteriously. "Maybe I just wanted to remind you how much I love you." They ate slowly, savoring the meal and each other's company. The house was quiet with just the two of them. Daniel and Mary and the children had moved into their own place on the far side of the ranch property. It was strange sometimes, having the house this empty after so many years of children underfoot, but it also gave them a chance to rediscover each other. After dinner, they sat on the porch as the sun set. Tessa had brought out a quilt, and they wrapped themselves in it against the evening chill. "I have been thinking," Tessa said, "about everything we have accomplished, about the life we have built." "Dangerous thing, thinking," Dakota teased gently. "I am serious. We came from nothing, both of us. We had nothing but each other and a determination to make something better. And look at what we created. 3 successful children, grandchildren, a thriving ranch, respect in the community. We did all that, Dakota, together." "We did," he agreed. "And I am proud of every bit of it, especially of you. We gave each other everything," Tessa continued. "You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. I gave you reasons to come home when you were just existing, not living. We saved each other, built something beautiful together. How many people can say that?" "Not enough," Dakota said, pulling her closer. "We got lucky, you and I. Lucky that you chose my porch to collapse on. Lucky that I was smart enough to see what was right in front of me. Lucky that we both had the courage to build something new. They sat in comfortable silence as night fell completely, the stars emerging one by one overhead. The desert stretched out around them, vast and beautiful and home. In the distance, they could see lights from Daniel's house, from the town, from other ranches scattered across the landscape. This was their world, the one they had built together. And it was good. In the years that followed, life continued its steady rhythm. Grandchildren grew and new ones arrived. Rose married a fellow teacher and they settled in Flagstaff where he had family. Samuel finished medical school and, true to his word, returned to Arizona, setting up practice in Camp Verde. He quickly became indispensable to the community, his skill and compassion making him beloved. Dakota and Tessa settled into their older years with grace. They were still active, still involved with the ranch and their family, but they also took time to simply enjoy each other's company. They had earned their rest, and they took it without guilt. On a warm day in June of 1920, Dakota and Tessa celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary. The family gathered at the ranch for a party, 4 generations now spanning from Daniel and Mary's oldest, Emma, who was 17 and preparing to attend teacher's college like her aunt, to Samuel's youngest, a toddler named Peter. As Dakota looked around at all these people, all these lives that stemmed from that day when Tessa had stumbled onto his porch, he felt overwhelming gratitude. This was his legacy, his contribution to the world. Not just the ranch or the cattle or the land, but these people, this family, this love. "Speech, Grandpa," someone called out, and Dakota found himself standing in front of the assembled group. "I am not much for speeches," he began, his voice still strong despite his 73 years. "But I will say this. 38 years ago, I married the woman who saved my life. I had been living, but I was not alive. I had a house, but I did not have a home. I had land and cattle and all the material things a man could want, but I did not have what mattered most. Then Tessa walked into my life and everything changed. She gave me reasons to come home. She gave me purpose and joy and love. She gave me all of you." He turned to Tessa, who was wiping tears from her eyes. "I love you. I have loved you from almost the first moment I met you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for everything." The family erupted in applause, and Tessa came to him, embracing him tightly. "I love you too," she whispered, "always and forever." They cut the cake Mary had baked, and the celebration continued into the evening. As the sun set, Dakota and Tessa found themselves on their porch once again, watching the familiar display of colors across the sky. "You remember what you said to me on our wedding night?" Dakota asked. "About how we saved each other." "I remember everything about that night," Tessa said. "You were right. We did save each other. But more than that, we created something bigger than ourselves. We created a family, a legacy, something that will continue long after we are gone. And it all started because you had nowhere to go, and I was lonely enough to take a chance on a desperate woman at my door." "Best decision you ever made," Tessa said. "Second best," Dakota corrected. "The best was asking you to marry me." As night fell and the stars came out, they sat together in the comfortable silence of two people who had shared a lifetime. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative. They had raised children and built a business. They had loved and fought and forgiven and grown. They had taken two broken people and made them whole. And through it all, they had given each other reasons to come home. The years that followed were gentle ones. Dakota finally fully retired from active ranch work when he turned 75, turning operations completely over to Daniel. He spent his days puttering around the garden with Tessa, playing with great-grandchildren, and sitting on that porch watching sunsets. Tessa remained active longer, still cooking and tending her garden well into her 70s. But eventually, she too slowed down, content to let the younger generation take over while she enjoyed the fruits of a life well lived. They were blessed to remain in good health and good spirits, their minds sharp even as their bodies aged. They still held hands when they walked, still kissed each other goodnight, still told each other, "I love you," every single day. In the spring of 1927, as Dakota approached his 80th birthday and Tessa her 78th, they sat together on their porch one evening, wrapped in blankets against the cool air. "You have any regrets?" Tessa asked him. "Looking back on everything, is there anything you would change?" Dakota considered the question carefully. "I regret the years before I met you when I was alone and thought I preferred it that way. But I cannot change those and they led me to you, so maybe they were necessary. Other than that, no regrets. Every choice I made after you walked into my life was the right one because I made them with you." "I feel the same way," Tessa said. "I used to think about my first marriage, about Peter and what happened. I used to carry guilt about it, but I do not anymore. Because if that had not happened, I would not have ended up here. I would not have found you, and I cannot imagine my life any other way." "We were meant to find each other," Dakota said. "I believe that. In all the world, in all the possible places you could have ended up, you found your way to me." "That was not chance. That was fate, or grace," Tessa said softly. "Maybe we were both given a second chance, a chance to build something beautiful from the broken pieces of our past." "And we did," Dakota said. "We absolutely did." They sat together as the stars emerged, holding hands and watching the sky. The desert was quiet around them, peaceful in a way that only came with twilight. Inside the house, lamps were lit, casting a warm glow through the windows. In the distance, lights from Daniel's house twinkled like earthbound stars. This was home. This was peace. This was love. Dakota turned to Tessa, seeing in her lined face the girl who had collapsed on his porch 45 years ago. She was still there in her eyes, in her smile. And when he looked at him, he knew she saw the lonely cowboy who had taken a chance on a desperate woman, who had given her a job and then a home and finally his heart. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For giving me reasons to come home. For making my life worth living. For loving me even when I did not think I deserved it. For everything, Tessa. Thank you for everything." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for the same. Thank you for seeing me when I felt invisible, for giving me hope when I had none, for building this beautiful life with me. I could not have asked for a better partner, a better husband, a better love." They kissed then, a gentle kiss that held 4 decades of shared life, of joys and sorrows, of ordinary days and extraordinary love. It was not passionate in the way of young lovers, but it was deep and true and eternal. As they pulled apart and settled back into comfortable silence, Dakota felt a profound sense of contentment. He had lived a good life. He had loved well and been loved in return. He had built something lasting, something that would continue long after he was gone. He had given Tessa a home when she had nowhere to go. And she had given him reasons to come home, reasons to live, reasons to love. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the ranch or the money or the success. Just the love. Just the family. Just the life they had built together, one day at a time, one choice at a time. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal. The desert breathed around them, patient and unchanging. And on their porch, wrapped in blankets and in each other, Dakota and Tessa Callahan sat together, watching another day end and feeling nothing but gratitude. They had saved each other, loved each other, and built a life together. And in doing so, they had created something beautiful and lasting and true. They had come home,